You're watching Auto Johnny.
Sup internet, I'm Auto Johnny, and welcome back to the final spooky episode of Let's Talk About. It's where I talk about upcoming movies, TV series, the history of the production and how they're made, along with movie news and comics. Then I break them down to make them easy to follow and give you my personal thoughts. And today, we mourn a death. And that death is Velma. That's right, for this Halloween special, we're going to be talking about Velma. Now, I originally was going to talk about the Halloween special, but since the show has seemingly been cancelled, why not just take a whole look at the series in general? And so, after watching 2 seasons and a Halloween special, I have some thoughts about the whole series. So, in this special episode, let's talk about Velma. Announced back in 2021, this adult version of Scooby-Doo was created by Charlie Grandy, and it stars Sam Richardson as Norville, Glenn Horton as Fred Jones, Constance Wu as Daphne Blake, and starring Mindy Kaling as Velma Dinkley. And after a few years, it would release on January 12, 2023, and when the first episode came out, it got a lot of negative criticism, and all this bad reception carried over to its second season. That's right, its second season, which came out April 25th, followed by the Halloween special, which came out on October 3rd. Now, before we talk about the series, I want to get personal for a little bit. Now, when prepping for this show, I was a little nervous because I am a big fan of Scooby-Doo and love all its incarnations. So when I was ready to watch this one and heard how bad it was, I felt a little nervous and hyped it up as like the worst thing ever. So when I finally watched it, wasn't as bad as I imagined it would be, but it was still pretty bad. Okay, now let me explain. Season 1 was by far the worst season, with episode 1 being the worst episode of the entire series. Holy was episode 1 painful. What didn't help was the meta humor. That was the one thing that was true about this series, the meta humor. It was so bad. The characters would just go on and on about tropes about movies, tropes about horror, and tropes about teen dramas that they basically sound like the audio drama of TV tropes. And they were so descriptive and so forced that they don't sound like savvy teenagers, but come across so annoying that I just wanted to shut up!
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care!
But probably one of the biggest problems with the series is that it's just not funny. At all. At all. In fact, I only laughed twice when watching this series. After all 2 seasons and a special, I only laughed twice. And worst of all, there is nothing more painful than sitting down and watching a bad comedy. Another thing I don't like about the show are the characters, especially the Scooby Gang. Let's be real, these are not the Scooby Gang that we've come to love and endear. And I'm not talking about the fact that they changed their races. I'm talking about the core and soul of the character. This version of Fred Jones can be summed up in 3 things. He's a rich man-child who has to have his food cut for him. He's white, so he's dumb and has a tiny penis. Daphne, outside of being beautiful, popular, and looking for her birth parents, as well as being a drug dealer, after her storyline is complete with finding her birth parents and still being popular, she kind of loses most of that and it just becomes kind of boring and just relegated to Velma's love interest. Next is Norville. Oh, Norville. One of my favorite characters in the original show is now reduced to just being Velma's simp. Actually, it's more than that. He actually becomes a bit creepy, constantly blowing up her phone, constantly bending over backwards just to date her and make her his. Like, my guy, just take a hint. She's not into you. The rest of the supporting cast is with Velma's dad sticking out as being an absolute piece of shit. But not far from the tree is Velma herself, who is by far the worst character in the show. Like seriously, her snark borders on annoying and so full of herself and so self-righteous. Thank you. In fact, most of the meta jokes and some of the worst bits come from her.
A serial killer calling from inside my house? Yes, that's a classic, and that's my point. Why change anything when the classics all still work, right?
And the fact that everyone, including the whole main cast, like Norville for one thing, Daphne eventually, and even Fred, are all in love with Velma is just so annoying, I guess. And what about Scooby? Well, Scooby-Doo is not in this show because apparently a talking dog is too childish. And they want this show to be mature because, you know, adult shows do not have like talking animals or anything like that. Also, the story is really bad as well. Like, things are just suddenly brought out of nowhere and then immediately dropped. Like, for example, Velma and Daphne's romance. From episode 1, where they're hating each other, to the end of episode 2, where they're kissing each other. I don't have a problem with them kissing or having a romance, it just felt so sudden, you know? In fact, I found the mystery itself not to be all that compelling or complex. Like, it's too easy to follow, or they would just bring an element out of nowhere. But the show is not without merit. For instance, I feel that the animation is really good in this show. Especially when Velma starts hallucinating due to her panic attacks. Those parts of the episodes are really gorgeous. There's also great shadow, great lighting, and some great expressions. And I found season 2 and the Halloween special a much easier watch. Which is not much, but it was definitely a much easier time getting through. Overall, I think this is a really bad show, and I think I can sum it up in one single thing. This is not a Scooby-Doo show. This show doesn't feel like Scooby-Doo. Like, it doesn't have the fun, the camp, and the horror. Hell, we don't even get ghosts until the last few episodes of season 2 and the Halloween special. It's mostly a government conspiracy with teens. Like, if you called this show anything else, it probably wouldn't have gotten much backlash, you know what I mean? Plus, I felt that this show was kind of embarrassed to be attached to Scooby-Doo. They make very few references to the original show, and anytime they do, it's either awkward or they have the characters just make fun of it. But in the end, if they just embraced what made Scooby-Doo endearing, this probably would have been a much better show in the end. And with that, that's the end of the video. What do you think of Velma? And if I missed anything, like and subscribe and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Thank you so much for watching all this spooky version of my show, and happy Halloween. So until next time, I'm Auto Johnny, and end transmission.